Rise of Hawk, Part 3, Scene 29. Zack was lying on his back on the carpet with his hands behind his head and his eyes closed. It was warm and comfortable in the north-facing room. He rested there in a sleepy haze of contentedness as the voices of Nalana and Talon flowed incomprehensibly over his head. It had been 3 weeks since they'd escaped the desert and become rebels. He'd never felt more at home in his entire life. Granted, he'd never been as cold, hungry, or tired in his life either, but the contentedness made up for most of the difficult stuff. Nalana's sudden, bubbling laugh brushed the doze from his mind. Tay, I'm not telling Ma I know he's going to ask me. That would ruin his surprise. Propping up on his elbows, Zack grinned sideways at her. So you'll be saying yes then? She flashed a little half-grin at him. That's for me to know and you to find out. Her bubbling chuckle sounded again, and Zack laughed along with her. The 3 of them had finished their chores and snuck upstairs to enjoy the rarity of a sunny winter's day inside. Zack's laugh faded and he sighed happily. He was where he should be and doing what he was meant to be doing. He knew this with every inch of his being. On the other side of Nalana, sitting closest to the door, Talon sat up. Usha's calling me, he said as he carefully got to his feet, favouring his still healing leg. I'll go see what she wants. All right. Zack watched Talon hobble into the hallway and called out after him. Ask her when I get to meet Hawk. With a laugh, Talon yelled back. But she always says the same thing. Zack rolled his eyes. Yeah, I know. When it's the right time. But ask her anyway. Next to him, Nalana chuckled. Well, at least you're persistent. Yes, I am, he grinned. You do know you'll eventually meet him, right? He nodded. Yeah, I do. And I know it's not going to happen until it's safe. I just like to remind Asha so she doesn't forget. Zack sighed and laid back on the carpet again. A comfortable silence descended on them and soothed the odd remaining ragged nerve. It was broken when Nalana started to hum a song she had regaled them with the night before. It was a lovely song, the story being one of heroes triumphing over evil. She seemed to have 3 passions in life, aside from Marcus, of course, which were healing, looking after the children, and telling stories in many forms. A thought struck Zack, and she sat up again. Hey, Nalana, what's your thing with Hawk? I mean, why do you tell stories about him that you know aren't true? An expression of veiled mischief crossed through her face. Promise you won't tell anyone but Hawk? He leaned in to listen. Of course. Well, my Nan was a time speaker, kind of like you and Hawk. When I was born, she said that I would help Hawk succeed in his mission to free all Psi. Nan used to tell stories of Hawk that my mother made sure I memorized. She said the stories were important to tell to the rebels because they helped Hawk. He tipped his head on the side. How do stories help Hawk? She smiled. They're like a disguise. The agency will hear the stories and be misdirected. The rebels will hear the stories and feel comforted and hopeful. All the while, he can be free to keep doing what he needs to do to win. They're like a mask for him to hide behind. Surprised, Zack laughed. I've seen your mask, Nala. It's part of my dreams and visions. And you know what? That's brilliant. She looked confused. What's brilliant? You give him the mask, and I give him the fire that he uses to fight the agency. Don't you see? In the place of all time, our threads both run along his. We echo him, like Asha. It means we're a piece in a larger puzzle for what he's fighting. He grinned at Nalana. That's totally awesome. Scene 30. Talon listened to the laughter of Nalana and Zack as he slowly hobbled his way down the hall to the stairs. It was nice to have laughter around him after all they had lost in the last year. The bullet wound in his leg still caused him a bit of pain to walk on, but he wasn't going to let it stop him. Somehow, Hawk had freed him from Nathan and the agency, and he wasn't going to waste a day of whining about the pain. Instead, he was going to enjoy every second of free life he had. Their building was very quiet. Only he, his sister, Zack, and Nalana had stayed behind to do chores. Everyone else was on deliveries, collecting food or selling crafts at the South Docks Market. It was a normal weekend day. His broken shoes slapped on the dusty wood floor at the base of the stairs. He put his hand on the railing and stopped to listen. The hallway was empty. They'd moved back to the beautiful stone mansion, the same building they'd moved to when he and Nama rescued Nathan from Gora prison, and where Bana had been captured. It was odd now, he thought about it. They captured an agent who turned into a rebel, and got a new rebel who turned out to be an agent. He heard voices from the kitchen and walked towards them. The kitchen door in the main hall was one of those push doors, without a handle or a lock. It was beautifully carved from oiled hardwood, framed in polished brass, and made almost no sound when it opened or closed. He put his hand on the wood and pushed. Nama's going to shoot you when he sees you. You know that, don't you? Asha's voice was cynical and amused. Yes, I know, but I'm sure we can figure out some. Talon stepped around the large steel oven to the main area of the kitchen. He saw the recognizable vivid blue eyes, light brown hair, and that amused half-smile. Tay, calm down and listen to me. His sister stepped towards him with her hands up. But it was too late. Talon's fear made him dive for his weapon, and it was aimed with the safety off before she finished her sentence. He stared down the barrel of his gun at Nathan. Nathan the traitor. Nathan the agent. Talon, look at me. The sister's voice was so strong with command he did as he was told. Talon, put the gun down and let me explain. It's Nathan. He's Hawk, she interrupted. Her voice was very quiet. His shock was so acute that his weapon hand dropped with his jaw. What? I don't understand. Asha approached him and took the gun from his fingers. I wanted to tell you as soon as I saw you'd rescued him from Gora prison, but it wasn't safe. I'm sorry I had to lie to you, Talon. His mind struggled to get around this new information. But he's an agent. He nearly killed me. Yes. Nathan stepped towards them, hands up at head height. I am an agent, but I'm also Hawk. He smiled. You can call me David. Nathan's broad hand extended towards him in greeting, and Talon took it before he realized he probably shouldn't show such trust immediately. The man gripped Talon's hand with both of his and spoke with a very gentle voice. Let me show you the truth. Nathan closed his eyes and let out a long, calm breath. The empathic ice around him lifted away as if he'd taken off a dark cloak and revealed a flowing, vibrant blue energy that sparked and burred with the dark, time-size static. Nathan's energy filled the entire room and its edges flowed into other spaces of their building. Talon gasped. He'd never sensed anyone quite so vibrant in empathic colour, nor with such a radius of black static. Haida Jenna, Talon whispered. The man had taken down all of his shielding, empathically and telepathically. For the first time, Talon could see the truth. This man was capable of anything, disciplined and compartmentalized. But most importantly, he could feel that this man was no threat to him. He wasn't sure how he could sense that fact, but he knew deep within him that whoever and whatever else this man was, he was Hawk and he was an ally. Still in shock, Talon barely felt Nathan let go of his hand. He stood there for a good minute, gaping, wondering what he should do or ask. Someone yelled from the hall outside and the kitchen door opened. It's Hawk. Didn't I tell you he was... Zack and Nalana ran through into the kitchen next to him, but upon seeing Nathan, Nala yelled fearfully and tried to run away. Nala! Talon grabbed her gently by the arms, and was overwhelmed for a second by a powerful wave of absolute terror. It's okay, calm down. He's not here to hurt you. She blinked at him for several seconds as she started to tremble. But it's Nathan. Zack frowned at them. No, Nala, it's Hawk. Talon wrapped his arms around her shoulders, bringing her closer to him in an effort to comfort her. It's okay, Nalana. It's okay. Zack's right. Nathan is Hawk. You don't need to be afraid of him anymore. He shared a calm feeling of safety through their touch, and she physically relaxed into his arms. When she stopped shaking, she looked uncertainly over her shoulder. Hawk gave her a sad, apologetic smile. I'm sorry for frightening you so much, Nalana. You knew. Her voice was tiny, but edged with anger, and sensing she'd fight him if he held her, Talon let go. She strode up to Hawk, the anger building and filling the room. Talon stepped forward, hoping to stop her, but before he could, she slapped Hawk hard right across the face. "I trusted you," she bellowed. "You knew my loyalty to you. You knew you could have told me who you were, but instead you chose to do that." She slapped him a second time. "I was prepared to die protecting you." She went to slap him a third time, but Hawk caught her wrist. "Yes, and that's exactly why I didn't tell you." His voice was very gentle. "I'm not worthy of your dedication. I'm just a man, Nalana. You know me. I may have lied about my name and my history, but you know me. I'm just a man who makes mistakes and is not worthy of your sacrifice. I didn't keep that secret to hurt you, but to protect you. I'm very sorry for scaring you so much, but I would make that decision again in a heartbeat to keep you or anyone else I care about alive." Hawk let go of her wrist and took a breath. "Now I need your help, and yours too, Talon." Vivid blue eyes glanced up at Tai, and he swallowed back his instinctive fear of the man. It's going to be difficult to get used to thinking of him as Hawk, not Nathan, their betrayer. "Nama's about to return home, and I'm going to need all of you to help me talk to him. Nalana, I'm sorry, but you can't tell Marcus. I hate to require you to lie to someone you love, but the less he knows, the safer he'll be." "Have you dealt with Cheetah?" Asha spoke up. Hawk glanced at her and nodded. "Yes, she's out of the way." "Did you kill her?" "No, Asha." His voice was gently correcting, with a confidence Talon hadn't seen before. "She echoes me. I'm not killing someone who may be important later. She's being transferred to internal assassin duty. It'll make escapes harder, but she won't be bothering the rebels again." She put her hands on her hips. "I don't think that'll be enough for Nama." Nathan chuckled, his half-smile lifting one corner of his mouth. "Well, he's going to have to learn that there are more important things in my life than exacting his vengeance." Talon sensed a flickering pulse of black static flow out from Hawk and into the room. The man sighed. "Nala, they're nearly here. Can you go outside and distract Marcus when he arrives?" She nodded slowly. "Okay." Scene 31. Nama parked the van in an alley off the street. He and Marcus walked round a brick wall towards the road and their building. When they got to the street, they could see Nalana waiting on the sidewalk out front. When he saw her, Marcus ran ahead to pick her up and swing her around in his embrace. She laughed and hugged him tightly. "We're going for a walk," said Nalana quietly. "Yes, a walk. Won't be long." Marcus gave him a wink, and they turned away down the street. Nama chuckled and pushed through the entrance door of their stone building. Inside, he dropped the box he was carrying on the floor and turned around to look for the others. Asha stood in the hall. Her arms were crossed over her chest and her lips were thin with worry. He raised an eyebrow at her. "What's up?" "First, I need to have your weapons, Nama." He laughed. "Pull on the other one. Where are the others?" He pushed past her. "I'm not joking, Nama. I need you to hand over your weapons." He shook his head at her and walked towards their dining room. "Where's Talon?" Behind him, she sighed. "In there. Don't say I didn't warn you, Nama." He glanced back over his shoulder at her and frowned. It was unlike her to act so strangely. The dining room was finally empty of boxes and furniture, so their three technical people could set up their project, making a replica of his grandfather's electricity generator. Dim sunlight filtered through murky panes of glass onto dusty amber floorboards. Talon stood to Nama's left in front of the door which led on into the kitchen. Talon lifted a hand up. "Nama, wait, before you—" Nama sensed a second person and turned. The man stood at the other end of the room in a shaft of sunlight. In devastating shock, Nama pulled out his primary weapon and was firing before he consciously realized it was Nathan he was shooting at. The man moved quickly towards him. Nama barely got 2 shots off before the magazine dropped to the floor and Nathan was twisting and pulling the weapon from his fingers. Stepping back, Nama went for a secondary, but the man dodged around his side and dislocated bones in his wrist and shoulder with surprising speed. The sudden pain made him drop his weapon with a roar. "Stop, Nama!" called Talon again. In the fog of pain, he tried to punch out at Nathan, but he was pulled into a headlock. Nathan tightened his grip in such a way that he yanked painfully on Nama's dislocated joints. He cried out again and his knees gave way. Nathan's grip was too tight on his neck. Stars sparkled and the room darkened. Nama realised then that he was going to pass out. Scene break. When Nama came to, his wrists and ankles were tied, and he lay in the dust of the dining room floor. His dislocated shoulder and wrist ached somewhat, but he could feel that the joints were back in place. "I warned you, Nama." Asha sat next to him on the floor with her legs crossed under her. "Don't ever claim I didn't warn you." "Asking for my weapons is not a warning in any language," he growled. Behind him, Nathan sighed. "You didn't give us time to explain, Nama. Will you just listen?" "Not like you've given me a choice," he grumbled. Asha took a deep breath and said something impossible. "Nathan is Hawk." He snorted. "Yeah, and I'm the founder's long-lost thousand-greats-grandson. Now untie me so I can wring that little Akenan's neck." Nathan's laughter sounded behind him. "She's not lying, Noah. I am Hawk. Actually, you can call me Dobit." "I think I'll stick with little Akenan for now, thanks. Hawk would never betray us. You betrayed us. Therefore, you are not Hawk. Now untie me and give us a fair fight." "Nama!" Asha sounded angry. "If you fight him for real, he'll kill you. Please, just listen. Stop being such a stubborn pleta and listen." "No," he snarled as he struggled against the ropes. "You listen to me. That man nearly killed us. He nearly killed Talon. And he scared the living darkness out of Nalana. He's a spy for the agency. When I get out of this, I'm going to wring his softened neck." The cold metal of a gun barrel touched his temple. He suppressed the cry of surprise that wanted out of him. "If I wanted Talon dead, I wouldn't have risked everything to free him again. I would have just killed him." Nathan's voice dipped into an icy hostility, and Nama tightened his jaw against his instinctive fear. "If I was a real agency spy, you would all be dead. I would not have bothered to sedate you nor knock out Marcus so I could escape. I would have simply shot you both in the head. And when Nalana discovered I was an agent, I wouldn't have paused to capture her. I would have left her body on the street. I have risked everything to keep you alive, and you and the other rebels alive, including getting shot by Gwen, and I will not allow you to ruin that effort because you are undisciplined in your lust for revenge." The weapon lifted from his temple, and the man's voice softened slightly. "I understand how much you've lost, Nama, and I'm sorry I couldn't stop it. But I need you to put your pain aside and join me. We're going to untie you now. If you wish, you can attempt to attack me again. I don't want to kill you, but I will if you force me to." With a tense expression on her face, Asha leaned forward with a knife and cut the ropes at his hands. She passed the knife to him, and Nathan cut his feet free. As soon as he was able, Nama stood up and backed away from both of them. A part of him really wanted to kill Nathan, and that part whined and screamed at the back of his head. But now he was calmer. He understood that there had to be some truth to what they said. He also knew Asha and Talon well enough to understand that they had to believe this man was Hawk. Otherwise, they would be attacking him too. Nama looked at Talon, who stood uncertainly in the same doorway he had been before. His old friend looked at him with wide eyes and his mouth slightly open. Talon was very afraid. Probably afraid that Nama was about to get killed because of his temper. Nama sighed. It was true then. Nathan was Hawk. He rubbed at the swelling in his wrist and hand. "So which is it?" He glared at him. "Owen, Nathan, or Dobit?" "Depends on who you ask." That familiar little half-smile lifted one side of Nathan's face, but it was somehow an expression of sadness and not his more usual mischief. "When it's just us, Dobit or Hawk will do." "And how come Hawk is the son of the head of the agency?" His smirk lifted slightly, and Alma saw the rogue again. What better cover is there than to hide in plain sight? "Well, this is a soft and ridiculous situation." Trying to regain some sense of confidence, Nama crossed his arms over his chest. "So what now?" "You told Asha that you wouldn't follow me any more unless I dealt with Cheetah. She's not dead, but she won't disturb the rebels again. If you still want to stick to that statement, I have a place for you in my special rebel cell. We're going after the Azera Council. Want to help?" The young man raised an eyebrow at him. Nama had the odd sense that he knew full well he'd say yes, and was just being polite and asking. The truth was, to go after the Azera Council like his grandfather once had, and with Hawk, filled Nama with an excitement he hadn't felt since he and Carla had escaped the agency almost 15 years ago. "The Azera Council?" he snorted, dropping his arms. "You know me well enough. Do I really need to answer you?" "No, I guess not." Nathan smiled and glanced away. "Asha, can you bring them to Rose Road once the evening meal is finished?" "Yes, sir." She responded in the same way that Nama had often replied to her, as a second to her general. Hawk moved to the doorway and turned to look back at him. "We can talk more tonight. I must leave before the others return." With a formal nod, Nathan left the room. Nama stared at the empty doorway for some time. His shoulder and head were aching quite badly. He needed to get a cold cloth on them to arrest the swelling. Sighing, he nodded his head a couple of times. "Right." He turned towards Talon, who stepped out of his way as he strode towards the odd little cupboard and kitchen. "Nama," Talon and Asha called out in unison. "Don't," he snapped over his shoulder. "Just leave me alone for a while." Scene 32. The dingy Rose Road safe house was Dobed's personal cave. The entrance to the building was off the street, down a little side alley. The apartment itself was right at the back of the building, so getting to it from the main road sometimes felt like walking into an actual cave. Inside the apartment everything was painted bright green. It wasn't his favourite colour, but it was better than the flaking, rotting walls of most rebel buildings, or the uniform cream of the tower. Every room was a touch too small. Even the bathrooms felt as if he was moving around in a house made for a child. But the sensation led to a sense of snug safety for him, similar to when he was a child and upset. He'd crawl into Trean's lab cupboards. These she kept empty especially for him, and just sat in the peaceful darkness until the pain eased. But with 5 additional bodies in the apartment, the snug had bordered on and fallen into crowded. The sitting room was only just big enough for a couple of 2-seat couches, with a small square coffee table in the middle, and enough space between furniture, walls and doors to walk around. Nama sat with Talon on one couch, placed against the wall. Asha and Zack were opposite on the second couch, and he had brought his comfortable recliner from his bedroom for Nalana, which left him perched on the tiny wooden kitchen stool. He watched them all talking and eating their ice cream, and a smile lifted into his mouth. "So," Talon leaned forwards to look at him, "where'd you meet Asha?" "Desert Training Base," answered Asha for him. Playfully she crowed out their old saying, "Alright, Ash and Dobe, us 3 against the world." Dobe chuckled and pointed his spoon at her. "Sometimes it was you 2 against me, remember?" "Of course," she grinned, "but only when you got cocky and deserved it." To his left, Nama nearly snorted up his ice cream. "Cocky then too, huh?" he retorted. "Did he shirk his chores as well?" Dobe dropped a spoon into his empty bowl. "Hey, I did every single chore you gave me, Nama." His half smile lifted. "I just wasn't around long enough for you to give me any more than that." Nama snorted again. "I would have too, just for the principle of the thing." "What principle is that?" Dobe laughed. "Pick on the new guy?" "No, pick on the guy who never volunteers to do his share without being asked." Dobe nodded. "Passive-aggressive discrimination. Okay, I'll look out for that next time." Everyone but Nalana had finished their ice cream and placed the bowls haphazardly on the tiny black coffee table. Dobe got to his feet and started gathering bowls and cutlery. "Does Hawk do just dishes?" The surprise in Talon's voice wasn't matched in his face when Dobe glanced up at him. "Yes, he does indeed. I have an elite class rating for dishes." He lifted the pile of bowls up and looked sideways at Nalana, who hadn't even eaten half of her ice cream. He made sure his voice and emotions were as gentle as possible, because she'd been very easy to surprise since they arrived. "Don't you like ice cream, Nala?" "Yes." She pulled the bowl in closer to herself, still with that look of a startled air in her eyes. "I'm savouring it." He turned away and walked to the nearby kitchen door with the bowls in hand. It would take time for her to learn to trust him again. In fact, it would take time for all of them to, which was an unavoidable consequence of his situation. He placed the dishes on his green bench and stepped back through the door into the sitting room. They didn't seem to notice his return. "This is weird." Nama sighed. Is a little, said Talon, but it's been a weird year. Dobid smiled at them. He adored how simple their lives were, how they could trust each other like family should. One day he would be able to join them in earnest and be free of the agency himself. For now it was nice to live vicariously through them. Still tense and a little frightened, the others looked at Asha. What do we do now? Said Nama. She smiled knowingly and glanced back at Dobid in the doorway. She was one of the few people who seemed able to sense him when he wasn't deliberately thinking about being present in the room. The others were suddenly embarrassed, and Dobid tried not to laugh. He lifted one hand to stem their apologies. It's okay. It's a fair question. What you do now is that you get to ask me questions. If I can, I'll answer them. One side of his mouth lifted playfully. It's a one-time offer, though, so get in some good ones. Nama banged the palm of his hand on the wood coffee table. I got a question, something that's bothered me all day. Why? Dobid sat down again on the little stool, frowning slightly. Why what? Why didn't you get yourself out of trouble at Gora prison? Why'd you let yourself get shot by Gwen? Nuth, why'd you let us capture you? He was forever explaining the functionality of time-side vision, but he took a deep, patient breath and started again. Being time-side doesn't mean I see everything. It's not straightforward at all, especially where white statics are involved. When things get complicated, I have to follow through with a situation to get out of it. Gora prison happened mostly because of a poorly disciplined arresting agent, and Talon being white static, so I couldn't stop it before it happened. Getting shot and captured 3 weeks ago was simple. It saved lives. Who? Well, Gwen needed to feel as though she had taken control of the situation. With her newfound confidence, she'll be able to survive longer with little Cass on the run. Getting captured saved your life, Nama. And how's that? Nama sat upright. Dobid grinned. Well, if you weren't guarding me, you would have gone to the desert, and you would have died. Bana wouldn't have had your rifle to use, and others in the attacking group would have been killed, including Amana. Beyond that, I also needed a cover from which to go and to control the situation in the desert from the inside. That was you on the helicopter? Zack, who hadn't spoken to Pete the whole evening, sat up in his chair. Yes. You let yourself get shot, captured, and then went into that horrible place just to get me out and stop others from getting killed? David lifted his eyebrows. Yeah. The young man seemed shocked. But couldn't you have died? He shrugged. Perhaps, but I could control the rogue elements sufficiently to make the gamble a fairly predictable one. Nama crossed his arms. I think Risa had it right. You're Kitasa-faced. Tell me about it, Asha snorted. But it works. Every time it looks like he's about to meet his maker, something changes and he lives. Against all odds. It's creepy. She pointed at Dobid. You know it's creepy too. He suppressed a gleeful grin. Maybe. The room descended into an introspective silence. Knowing them fairly well, Dobid waited patiently for the next person to speak. I have a question. Talon's dark eyes were serious. There's got to be some consequences to us knowing who you are, and considering the scale of this thing, they've got to be big too. Dobid had expected a few more questions before they got to the subject, but it did need to be addressed. Well, the crux of the matter is that you can never make it alive to the telepath interrogators. Nama rolled his eyes. Yeah, that's a given. In the event you are captured, there are only 2 outcomes. Hopefully I'll be able to get to you in time, and then I'll have to kill you. If I can't get to you in time, you'll need to have a mental shield constructed, which will kill you when the interrogator anchors in your mind. The room was silent for a moment. Nama looked at everyone and then back up at Dobid. That's not a very nice way to die, nay? Dobid shook his head slowly. No, it's not. And that's why if you're captured, I will do everything in my power to get to you in time. But, Zack fiddled nervously with his fingers. But couldn't you just get us out? He stammered. You got Talon out. Young, wide eyes looked up at him, and Dobid wondered if the boy was going to try and run. He deliberately softened his voice. No, I'm sorry, Zack. It's not possible. It was only by incredible luck that we got Talon out. The installation of a mental shield is only a precaution. We'll all do what we can to stop anyone getting captured. But I won't lie to you. Being a part of this cell is going to be dangerous, and I will require a lot from you. The consolation prize, however, is that the primary role of this cell is to protect the rebels, so it's for a good cause. There was silence again. He let the fear and questions simmer in their minds. He knew it was a lot to ask of them, and they needed time to absorb all of the information. First one to speak was the last person he expected. "I'm scared," said Nalana, "but I'll do whatever it takes to protect the rebels." Taylor, Nama and Zack nodded in agreement, and Dober let out the breath he'd been holding. "So who else is joining us?" Nama lifted an eyebrow at him. "Pretty ineffective cell if it's just us 6. Scene 33. Zack stood at the kitchen bench drying bowls and spoons from their evening supper. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. It had been a big day. He had no idea what he'd expected of the real man behind the hawk mask, but Dobert had not been it. Also, the others had all of this history with Hawk that he didn't understand or share. The whole situation made him feel oddly disoriented and disconnected from the events of the day. Next to him, Hawk washed the last bowl and put it on his countertop. "How are you handling all of this, Zack? You haven't said much tonight." Zack picked up the last bowl and started drying it. "I don't really know. It's not what I expected." Hawk grinned at him. "Life seems to enjoy keeping us on our toes, doesn't it?" "It does." He put the dry bowl with the others on the bench and dumped the wash towel on top of them. "Here." Hawk patted Zack on the shoulder and indicated the chairs and table behind them. "Sit. Let's talk now. It's a bit overdue." Zack smiled wearily and sat. "It is, isn't it?" Hawk sat down opposite him. His smile was gentle. "First, I have to apologize. I'm sorry things came out as they did. I asked you to come tonight because I wanted you to feel like a part of the group, but I think I was too blunt. You looked about ready to do a runner on me earlier." Nodding, Zack chuckled. "I sure was close. Then I remembered that I've dreamed about you my whole life. I meant to be here with you, Nalana, and the others. It's like the entire world is being affected by what we're doing here and now. That's scary, but it feels right." "I'm glad you sense it too." Hawk nodded slowly. "This is bigger than just the rebels. How much bigger even I can't see. I only know it's world changing, and you're a part of that change." His tone softened and he lifted his chin a little. "So you have my fire?" Zack grinned. "Yes, it's in Rona." Hawk sat back, surprised. "Rona? Why Rona?" "You're going after the Azera Council. You're going to plant a bomb in the council chambers. The Rona Aban have the explosives you want." "Of course," he said quietly. "The only place we could get tactical explosives in Arana would be the armed forces, and that would be almost impossible. But will the Rona Aban trade with us? No, could we even find them to start a dialogue?" "No, not yet, but the time will come." "Do you see when they can start trading with them?" Zack shook his head. "No, but I know it'll start with a little boy, about 8 or 9 years old. I've seen his face in my dreams since the night the agency took me." Zack opened his mind so Hawk could see the boy. His eyes were so grey they were nearly silver, light brown hair with flecks of blonde. He wore the clothes of a normal boy, but they refused to look comfortable on his skinny form. Zack remembered the boy walking towards him, only little but moving like an adult, speaking like an adult. His large, beautiful silver eyes staring up at him. And there was a little fear in those eyes, but they were mostly filled with determination. "My name is Wolf Malar,"